policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child, raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not what, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to get more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restricted state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said.
I'm trying to figure out why abortion even exists.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let
I
me
mean,
ask you about
we're
that.
talking about women's rights. She should have kept her legs closed, cut and dry. And if you read your Constitution, you'd know abortion is legal as long as there's an adult for minors. So you people are just making a
Well, Nora,
mess of
first all,
this.
I never supported a national ban. I did during when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not. Though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical
See what I just said?
Nora,
It's already in the Constitution.
Is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making child care more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real
What's Walls look like? He looks like
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that.
he looks like the dude.
Pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice.
No,
The implications
pro-life.
not be that. Women
Pro-life.
Women not getting the care.
It's already in the Constitution.
Prosecuted for providing that
My
care.
God.
And as far as making sure that we're educating our children,
Read your Constitution. That's the biggest problem.
We understand that too. We know
People
that the
take this
options
all
need
out
to
of
be
context
and we make
when
that
they
true.
don't even
We also make it
understand the
how can we state
Constitution.
for the best place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber
The Constitution
to try and get health care.
of the United States. Do you see? It's a downloaded copy. Do that and read
And
it.
maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota rule that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-life,
That's all murder.
it's fundamentally barbaric, and that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen. Do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby.
Walls looks like a mannequin. What's that dude? A puppet. With that face on. Watch what he looks like when he rests his face.
About their healthcare decisions and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was that wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting against, that's been miswritten. It was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is
What debate? It's the first debate you've ever had, you fool.
Tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business.
It's the first and only.
Best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals. They get early childhood education.
Why should I feed other people's children? Please tell me. Why should we feed other people's children? This is pathetic.
Things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific
Make life easy for families. Get 2 jobs. Have 1 baby.
So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
I did surveys and I saw this. I talked to this old lady or old man, and he said the first time when we got married, he said we didn't worry about abortions. My wife and I sat down and we decided we're going to be on the pill for 3 years. They just went at it for 3 years, man. And then they got off the pill and had a family, like they're supposed to do.
Monitoring and fast protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe for a faster police response. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. How can you be sure?
Yeah, 2 people. How we doing today?
This one's like your last boyfriend. It's got issues.
For the rest,
All right.
just say, show me the Carfax value. You'll get the most for it.
This is ridiculous. It's crazy, man.
Carfax.com.
University of Maryland.
Just give me something to hold on to and I'll believe in you.
One that values the
But right now, I'm having a tough time believing in Tim Walz and Kamala or Kamala. Kamala or Kamala.
Well, your next success.
I'll say it how I want to.
From a backed up
Say it how I want to.
Miralax works naturally.
You're gonna call me Joseph or Joseph or Joey or hey Joe, hey Joseph. I'll call you what I want. Kamala Harris.
But did
A
you
pig.
think Prevagen can help keep your memory sharp? The secret is the powerful ingredient apoaquarin, originally discovered in jellyfish and found only in Prevagen. In a clinical study, Prevagen was shown to improve memory in subgroups of individuals who are cognitively normal or mildly impaired. Stay sharp and improve your memory with Prevagen. Prevagen, in stores everywhere without a prescription.
So leave in the comments, DM me. Let me know what's going on.
It's the hardest conversation.
I think it's scary, to be honest with you.
Telling them the baby won't make it. And now, because of Florida's extreme abortion ban, I also have to tell them they can't help. The ban forces women to wait until the brink of death to get care and could send doctors like me to prison just for treating my patients.
This is a lie.
And it's why I'm
read the Constitution of the United States, and then go and read the Constitution of Florida. It's all a lie.
Power to change everything. It's the new Modular 2 at Rooms to Go. One collection that gives you the power to relax in total comfort, the power to recharge, the power to create the perfect sectional for any space. Just choose your pieces and transform your room. The best part, because it's Rooms to Go, you can do all this all within your budget. Now that's the power to save. I'm Julianne Huff, and this is what's possible with the Modular 2 at Rooms to Go.
I'm Rick Scott, and I approve this message. Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell has a silly socialist plan for the border. She wants to give illegal immigrants a tax break. Ridiculous. Mucarsel-Powell votes for higher taxes on Florida families. Then she votes to give illegal immigrants income tax rebates. You pay your taxes. She wants to give your money to people here illegally. Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, a silly socialist, wrong for Senate.
The devastation from Hurricane Helene across Tampa Bay is staggering. Homes and businesses gone. Families left to pick up the pieces of their lives. Our neighbors need your help. That's why News Channel 8 is partnering with the American Red Cross for relief efforts. Every dollar raised will stay in Florida. If you're able to donate, scan the QR code or visit WFLA.com/relief.
Get the latest updates on the 2024 election on the NBC News app. We're back now with tonight's vice presidential debate.
When it ends, join us for analysis. Now back to the debate.
CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Laura, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer, and I think we've got to have some.
I think we need to get the bad guys out of here. Or maybe we should, hang out with them in Aurora, Colorado, where they're taking over.
17-year-old, and and he witnessed a shooting at a community center.
Oh my dear. I've never killed an animal, but I know it's possible and I know I should. I don't even like to kill fish. But you know what? I really enjoy eating it when I got it.
And they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted
the vice president is what? She's a gun owner. That's all she is. She's never killed a thing in her life.
If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what
you don't need research. Just walk the streets, you idiot.
100% believe that Senator Vance
research nothing. Research the fact that your border is open, you idiot.
Other things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills?
Yeah, but there's countries around the world where they're not letting every freak into their country. You stupid. If I'm listening tonight, I should jump off a bridge if I wanted to vote for you, you pig.
I'm sorry about that, and I appreciate it. Okay, Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's
there you go.
Problem and Finland.
There you go.
Okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety.
Yes.
We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country.
But it's not the people with the guns. The people with the guns are
why we have such a bad gun violence
the bad people.
Big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities.
What about Aurora, Colorado, where they taken over apartments?
Gun offenders off the street.
Stop milking this, even you, Vance. Stop it. It's not a problem. The school is not the problem.
You previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it's only later in your political career
you cannot blame the schools. You have to get a snake by its neck.
The NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today.
And why not? Because of all the Democratic policies, you idiot.
The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns.
He said drugs. Drug-related, he said. Drug-related mental health, you idiot.
There's a capacity to find solutions on this that work.
Yeah. Keep the illegals out.
That's our priority.
Send them back home.
Thank you, Nora.
Keep the cartel out, you idiot.
To inflation, the high cost of
inflation
and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes.
Yeah, but we only brought in 10 million freaking illegals that they're going to allow to get licenses in New York. Wow!
Home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive the prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. First, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up. It can be shifted. It can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we get some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case. It's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is,
for the past 4 years it is, you idiot.
Affordable housing.
What the heck is your problem? Vance, you better listen up.
Create that
with that crusty haircut.
Senator Vance.
You need to call me up, 727-645-1310.
To build homes.
I'll give you a real haircut.
Provide tax breaks and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices.
My name is Joseph.
Where are you going to build all the new homes you're
Look at this one. She needs some sun. My God.
Immediate relief. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for.
Oh, yes, we do.
But we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Which does.
Yes, we do.
Tim.
Yes.
25.
Look at his eyes.
Competing with
He's like that marionette dude.
Most significant of home prices in the country.
And he's always writing something down.
Massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala.
Oh, isn't that a turkey neck? You don't look sideways, not with a turkey neck, buddy. You need to go to the gym.
The most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she
a loser.
These policies to make housing more affordable.
A loser.
The office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill.
Hell yeah.
The biggest drivers of housing.
Lower energy prices. This year, Ron DeSantis isn't such a nice guy as everyone thinks. You know, he'll give you the gun rights and do everything, but Pasco County and Pinellas County, you can't trust them. Yeah, the sheriffs there are no good. Narco and
Senator, if you still have 20
I forget his name,
seconds there,
the guy in Pinellas, Galliano or something. Bad guys. They don't believe in stand your ground. They don't believe in stand your ground. They don't believe in the castle doctrine.
They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up.
Oh, take a park and make a housing. Knock it all down. Put up a parking lot. Why don't we go after the guys that are buying them up? You said it's a commodity, so why don't we stop them from being a monopoly and buying up all these buildings so that they can rent them to the American people so that we can put immigrants in them like they do in Seattle. Michigan, that's a bad state, dude. I don't know if you people realize that. But in Michigan, I think they went into the Michigan or Oklahoma, and they went in and the Satans Satan churches. They went into the
There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis,
courts,
for example.
the Supreme Court, and took out the Declaration of Independence and all that good stuff. So he's, you know,
parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands,
you better protect them.
For a reason, they belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think
you don't sell federal land, you idiot. You buy the properties from the rich people who are monopolizing buying the buildings that are empty. You stupid.
Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up.
14 million people, you idiot.
Like, for you to clarify, there are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have
Immigrants.
that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity, but the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. That in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you, gentlemen.
And we all know Congress is a bunch of losers just as well.
I can tell.
I own a $3,000 trailer. I put a door in it. They called the Pasco County, and they literally made me take the door out and replace stuff.
In response, he
It's a
said,
trailer, dude.
Concepts of a plan. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. It's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. You think about healthcare, you go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is
Obamacare is a mess.
Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with
You ever go to nursing homes?
has ever said or
The way they
done.
stink?
But when Obamacare
They're
was
just
crushing
commodities. commodities as this puppet is talking about. Commodities. Doesn't sound about anything. Look at that face.
It's not perfect, of course.
Look at that.
So much more that we can do.
Mean.
Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully.
I'm getting tired.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives
This
you
is
history.
stupid.
I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it's so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic.